We are live. We are live. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us on our webinar series, Unseen Impact, where we will highlight, edify, and share the leadership lessons and growth strategies of some of the brightest engineering and manufacturing minds that you may not be familiar with, but you should get to know, right? My name is Sean Bartley. I'm the founder of Crown Technical Staffing, a specialized engineering and manufacturing recruitment firm based here in Atlanta, Georgia. We partner with small to mid-sized manufacturers, design teams, and integrators, helping them find and retain that elusive technical talent and the frontline engineers and executives who help develop and guide those teams. But before we get started today, let's really be intentional, right, with our time. I hope that you'll walk away at the end of this conversation with four things. Number one, right, the proven frameworks for finding, empowering, and mentoring top talent in today's market. The playbook that Brett used to turn teams that were underperforming at $100,000 annually in revenue generated into teams producing $1 million per month upon his exit. Number three, the strategies to boldly switch lanes and career paths and why non-linear career paths can become your secret weapon, right? And lastly, Brett wants us all to walk away with lessons he wishes every executive knew about long-term success versus short-term wins. We've named this series Unseen Impact, and that was intentional as well and for a reason, because the best leaders often influence in ways that aren't immediately visible, right? Our guest today, Mr. Brett Duffy, is the EVP of Engineering and Operations at CASPR Technologies, and he embodies that fully. I can't do any justice to Brett's introduction, so I'll let him actually take over, share his story. Brett, are you ready for us?
I'm ready. Let's go.
Okay, let's kick this thing off with the first question, Brett.
All right.
All right. Give us, for those who are checking us out on LinkedIn, in the LinkedIn audience tuning in live, give us that 90-second elevator pitch. Who are you? What's your role at Casper? What's one thing about your work that would really surprise people?
My name is Brett Duffy, as Sean mentioned. And Sean, thank you for having me on as the inaugural guest of your, I'm sure to be exceptional webinar series. I'm from Queens, New York originally. And I come from a background of lifelong learning and implementation of that, solving problems and improving processes in my world. Um, I'm currently the EVP of Engineering and Operations, as Sean mentioned, at CASPR Technologies. We are a company that produces disinfection technology. You can see some of it on the fake table behind me. And so it's very good at creating gaseous hydrogen peroxide, which disinfects both the air and surfaces. In that role, I manage the production of the products, the design of new products. We're developing a few new products and also interface with the sales function and the sales team to provide technical support and all those sorts of things. I've had 25 years of being in the business of engineering and operations and sales, and a little bit of, as Sean mentioned, and we'll talk more about, I'm sure, the unconventional path to my positions.
100%. And so you've mentioned a few areas that you have expertise in, right? And you've got an impressive academic foundation, right? I found that one of the more intriguing things about you, Brett. So the mechanical engineering degree, that's one thing, that's cool. Then you said, let me go get a master's in science of operations management, equally impressive. And then you said, all right, I'm going to put the trump card down and go and get my MBA, right? So that's really quite the investment in education. What drove that progression, right? And how do those three perspectives work together in your day-to-day leadership?
So I'm going to go a little further back to when I was like 1.5 years old,
Okay.
because everybody
Okay.
wants to hear my whole life story. No, because it's relevant. I grew up in the Montessori education environment,
Mhm.
starting in New York, where I, was born, and then even attending one in Rome, Italy, when we lived over there for a few years when I was younger. And the thing about Montessori is that it's very hands-on and it's very self-driven. So those skills, those desires to learn, were instilled in me in a very young age. And so that always learning concept, like you mentioned, going back to get the master's, going back to get the MBA, those things have been really strong for me over the years. In between all of those, I have I believe very heavily in um, continuous education. So even though, over the years I've needed required courses and things, I've always taken way more than I needed to.
Mhm.
And so, everything from art direction to lean management to real estate to Kaizen to like all the different, anytime there's an opportunity to take a class, I'm taking one next week in HVAC design with ASHRAE,
Okay.
because, I'm a mechanical engineer. I understand it, but let's ramp it up, right? Let's get it to the next level. And that just to me is always the way it goes. My engineering mind is what drives all of that. They all tie together, and so whether it's the experience in sales, the education in operations management, the MBA, it's all funneled through that engineering mind, right? Like that's kind of how that goes. Um, I believe that the all of this education has helped me go from being an individual contributor that sees what I'm working on to a team leader from the standpoint of seeing the big picture, right? Like understanding that the implication of this piece goes to affect this and this and this. And while we're improving this over here, we need to take into consideration the other things that are going to play into that because we might improve something over here that makes this over here worse,
Right.
right?
Right.
And so you always have to be paying parts to that. Um, I think the other piece of my educational background is that I lead from a place of learning. I believe that everyone you work with, one of my favorite roles over the years and experiences was working in an agile environment where that's the whole business plan, right? Everybody learns from everybody, everybody gets to contribute, and no idea is just ignored or blown off as stupid.
Right. Okay. In forging or kind of melding those parts together, right? There was some impressive growth at a particular spot in your career path, right? And that was the growth trajectory at Playland International, where you were
Yep.
the director of engineering. Taking that engineering team, 10xing their growth, complete multiplier, right? Walk us through that biggest mindset shift you had to make, right? Because there has to be a mindset shift from that individual contributor, as you mentioned, to leading that type of scale from 100K to 1 million per month upon your exit.
So
So,
when I started, I was an individual contributor.
okay.
I was the only engineer. I was the engineering department.
Mhm.
And so I got the experience of getting to build out an engineering design program department, a manufacturing and quality engineering control. All the different aspects in a manufacturing facility. I was lucky enough to get into that industry when it was shifting from kind of a garage industry to a mainstream commercial industry. Um, Beautiful thing about that industry was there's a lot of cross collaboration within the competitors, the engineers at least. We met uh, every other month to try and improve all of us, right, and make sure that what we were bringing to market was safe and functional from that standpoint. So we got to interface with ASTM's safety standards. We also created an association of manufacturers called IPMA that um, allowed us a vehicle to certify to those safety standards, right? The standards are great, but the random customer doesn't know how to interpret all of that and determine if the product they're buying is compliant with that. So this association and certification allowed us to take the industry to the next level to where end users could have confidence that if something was IPMA certified, it was safe. It met the ASTM guidelines from that standpoint. So I think that experience was a major turning point in my career as I learned how to navigate all of those different pieces and again feed that all into the big picture of okay, let's grow. And as a company, we, massive growth, right? Like bigger than I could have ever imagined.
Yeah.
And it was fun.
Yeah.
It's playground. So we had a good time.
Right. So when you're building those teams, right, you're developing the engineering and the sales teams to take that leap, right? Especially at Casper, what do you look for in the candidates that others may miss, right? And how have you leaned on, let's say, those external partners? Because something we didn't talk about, right, was you came and we started working together first as a one as a client, right?
Yes.
Seeking our help to build out your sales engineering team. And how did you lean on external partners like us and others to help in that growth phase?
So not trying to, give too much of a shout out to Sean, but excellent person to work with, team to work with on trying to recruit people. At Casper, we were a small company. We still are a relatively small company, but we were implementing some roles, sales engineers, that we had not had before. And in meetings with Sean and being able to flush out, okay, what traits are we looking for? What things, really bringing that all together was priceless for us, right? Like that was a huge help in us being able to understand from your experience what types of people are sales engineers and things like that. Um, and then beyond that, for me as a hiring manager, I always just want to have a conversation first because I want to get to know the person as a person because I think that connection, if they're going to work for me, for example, they have to be able to connect with me, right? If somebody you hire somebody that doesn't like you and doesn't feel comfortable coming to talk to you about issues or whatever, that's not going to go as well as if it's somebody that you can connect with that has that um, comfort in being able to reach out to you, right? It doesn't mean we all have to be the same, right? Like I don't have to hire a bunch of me, but we have to have similar abilities to connect, right? And I think that's a key piece that a lot of people miss in their looking for candidates.
Yeah.
I'll give you an example. We interviewed a guy um, for the role on paper, perfect, great fit, had all checked all the boxes, answered all the screening questions properly, everything looked good. We get on the first interview. He's in a car. Okay, he's not driving
Right.
but he's in a car,
Right.
which is okay, maybe not
Right.
great. But during the entire interview, this is what I got. And I'm like,
Couldn't
dude,
focus. Yeah.
you're
Couldn't focus at
interviewing.
all.
Like,
Yeah.
could you give me just a few minutes
Right.
of your time, right? Like, are you really interested?
Right.
And clearly that wasn't a fit, right? And
Gotcha.
that would not have been a fit in the rest of our company either.
Right. Right. Okay. And you saying that, right? So there are individuals that are, logged in with us on LinkedIn Live right now who are in transition right now, looking for opportunities, or they have an opportunity, but they want and are open to better, right?
Mhm.
As that hiring manager, what are just two or three things that someone can do, whether they're an executive or they are the frontline engineer or technical talent that we're talking about? What can they do to stand out from a crowd and be noticed as the person that you would like to interview with?
I think one of the ways to do that is to try and find organic ways to get in front of people,
Mhm.
right? Like if you're in a city that, you want to stay in that city and you work in a certain industry, you should be active in that community, right? Outside of your company, because that's where connections can be made, right? Now, those connections might help in your current role, but they might also help if you have a future need for a role, right? And so I think that's a big piece. The other piece that I would say is be genuine. Try not to be too salesy. Try not to AI it too much
Mhm.
from that
That's
perspective,
key.
right?
Mhm.
Like if your resume comes across and it matches the job description perfectly,
Right, right.
call
Red
BS
flag.
on that one.
Yeah,
There's something wrong there. So just be genuine, be yourself, and you'll connect with the right opportunity when
yeah,
when it happens.
yeah.
Don't be stressed about the fact that Oh, well, I'm not getting responses. Okay, well, then those aren't the right opportunities for you.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. So before we even, I want to make sure everybody is picking up what you're putting down, Brett, because you've shared some insights, your frameworks that have worked successfully for you, in scaling and building these teams. And if you can, you're in the LinkedIn live in the chat right now. Just put an emoji, put a word, yes, I follow you, something so that we know you're engaged, so that we know you are here with us, right? Again, I want to make sure we are all intentional in getting something from the conversation today.
Or
We've
put
also
the word that,
put
says
the
what
word,
you're
right,
getting, right?
right.
Like give us a word that describes what you're feeling as a positive impact of the conversation.
That would be
Because it
helpful.
is just a conversation. Like we're not trying to be
100%.
all
Buttoned up. It's
right.
not good. But also, there's a calendar in the chat right now. If you'd like to book some time just to have a conversation with myself, similarly, if you're looking for Brett's information, his email as well as his LinkedIn are the best two ways to get in contact with him. They are in the chat right now. They're either pinned or they are in the chat, and you'll be able to take a look at it and plug into it and have the conversation with either Brett or myself. If you're looking for similar results that as to what Brett has experienced in working alongside us, the calendar is there for you to do so. So, Brett, we're going to transition and just make sure that we dive in a little bit more into just the mindset, right? How you work. Again, this is unseen impact. And we designed it that way for a reason, right? So some of the impact we're going to get into as to what you've experienced. So with manufacturing and engineering leaders, they're constantly balancing innovation, right? Balancing innovation with execution. When you're launching that new product or that new business unit, what's your framework, right, for managing risk while still pushing these boundaries?
So the way I approach that, obviously I'm an engineer.
Mhm,
So innovation for me is all about everything I do, right? Like literally I can't walk down the street without looking at stuff and trying to figure out how to make it better, right? Like it's just how I think about things. But there's a big risk in just randomly changing stuff in an innovation
mhm,
that may or may not be an innovation, right? Just because I think that it makes something better doesn't necessarily make it better. And that can apply to product design. It can apply to service improvements and changes. It can apply to process improvements. I've seen manufacturing environments where people have implemented process improvements that actually made things worse. You've got to look at who you're doing it for.
right.
So it's one thing if I'm doing some kind of improvement to my home office for me, right? Because I'm the expert on what I want it to work like. But if I'm doing anything for that someone else is going to benefit from, I need to know what they know and I need to know what their perspective is. And so whether it's talking to end users and customers, whether it's working with the sales team that interfaces with the customers, marketing and research people, like depending on the size of your company, you might have more or less of those. But I think it's really important to connect with that end user. The other big piece is part of the agile environment that I love so much is don't be afraid to fail. If you're not failing, you're not trying hard enough. The reality is that if you can implement things in small scale quickly, minimizes cost,
Mhm,
and then get feedback on whether it's worth pursuing or not. Does this change help the end user?
mhm,
Then you can know and you can implement, you can go forward with the ones that work. You can trash the ones that are total trash. You can learn from the ones that maybe gave you some insight that now lead you into a different direction that might make it better in the end. So that to me is the key piece is make sure that you're interfacing who your end customer is, regardless of the channel that you might have to do that with, and come back. I remember when I worked for a tech startup, we were doing a video walkthrough presentation for people. Like we were touring people around properties and we created 360-degree videos of these tours. And we went and met with an older lady. She put on the goggles, and like the conversation she was having with virtual me, which I wasn't doing, like, right, it's a static video, right? Like
Yeah.
it didn't have any interaction. It's not like AI or something, but it literally, like, you could feel that she felt like she was there with me going through the building. And that's what I really thought, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that you're looking for, that kind of innovation that sparks that response and able to go from there.
Mhm. So I've seen in just in my career, right? You've got the great product, you've got the leadership, culture is the big missing piece, right? So let's get practical for folks that are viewing right now. What are just some of those, let's say, 2 to 3 non-negotiable principles you follow when building that team culture? You've got everything else, but when building that team culture, especially in a technical environment, give us 2 or 3 non-negotiable principles that you completely follow.
So it's, especially in a technical environment, it's easy to lay out the technical responsibilities of a job, right? Like you have to be able to use a CAD system. You have to be able to understand the design of an HVAC system, whatever.
Mhm.
But those things are knowledge-based, solvable issues, right? Like those are things that someone can learn. And for me, the culture is always focusing on what can somebody bring as a value to the table versus what can't they do, right? And if the things they can't do are things that we can just teach them, well, that's easy, right? If they can't be taught how to care whether their colleagues are being successful or not, they can't be taught to be on time and dress professionally and act professionally, right? Like those things, and those go back to culture fit, right? Because different companies have different approaches.
Mhm.
I think a good example of that is for instance, like good engineering practices, right? That means something different to everyone, depending on your level of OCD-ness. In some companies, that good engineering practices is extremely rigid, and in other companies, they're kind of chill about it,
Mhm.
right? Like it's not that big of a deal. And so if you brought somebody in that was super strict and rigid about the good engineering practices into a company that was really based on chill, it's not gonna go well,
Yeah,
right? Like it's not gonna mesh.
disconnect for sure, for sure. And I'm sure mentorship plays a large part in connecting these cultures together, right? All of us, every single one of us, myself included, we've been shaped in some way, shape, or form by a mentor. Whether you know them in person or someone you listen to, someone you watch. Can you give just one piece of advice, right? Or a lesson from someone who's influenced your career, your perspective, and how you're now paying that forward?
So that example that I just gave actually came from one of my mentors. I've had many over the years. And that comment that when you are working with someone,
Mhm.
when you are hiring someone, focus on what they can do, not what they can't, and help them focus on what they can do, not what they can't. Because if the person that you're mentoring or working with is so focused on their shortcomings, that's all that they're going to see, that's all that they're going to project.
Mhm.
That's not a path to success.
Mhm.
You've got to project and lean on the strengths that you have, the capabilities that you have. So, example, I work with a guy who public speaking is just not his thing. And if I'm mentoring him, I'm not going to even suggest that he go do like Toastmasters or something because it's just not in his DNA. But that means that as leadership, you have to leverage that person into the role that doesn't have that as an important piece of the role because he has so much to offer on the other side that doesn't include public speaking. He's brilliant in so many ways. He's just not good at public speaking.
Right.
So who cares? Let's just make sure that we're leveraging the things that we can.
Yeah.
And then, you have people that might struggle a little bit with understanding the technical aspects, right? Like I got the killer salesperson that's really good at getting appointments, really good at making presentations, all those sorts of things. Somebody asks a technical question, throws some jargon at them, and they're like, oh, I don't know what that is.
Mhm.
Um, but see, over time, it's easy to teach that person the jargon
Right.
and the technical things, right? Like that's just a knowledge shortcoming. Knowledge can be achieved, can be attained, right? Culture, personality, those things don't change very
No,
much.
no.
It's like dating someone that you think, well, if I could just have them be like this, they'd be perfect. Well, they're not going to be
Right.
like that. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Right?
Right.
So when
Right.
you're hiring, think the same way,
Gotcha.
right? Like if you
Yep.
think somebody showing a shortcoming that's going to bother you, well, you
Might
should
look
let it
elsewhere.
go,
Yeah.
right? Move on.
Yeah, yeah. So that's part of the reason behind, naming this webinar series, this episode, Unseen Impact, right? Because oftentimes leaders, they're influencing in ways that aren't immediately visible. Um, what's an example of an unseen impact you've had on your team or your organization that you are particularly proud of and that we can all kind of learn from?
Um, so you've mentioned that I kind of had a weird, abnormal, I don't know, use better words than that, path to my
Unconventional. Unconventional.
unconventional. That's a much
Yeah.
less,
Yeah,
judgmental
that's
word for it.
yeah.
Unconventional path to where I am. And along that way, I actually owned and ran a ad agency for a while,
Mhm.
which is kind of strange for an engineer to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
But it is part of my life. And so, like in my current role, we have been a startup, basically restarting a company and a brand and all those sorts of things for the last couple of years, and being able to help influence the marketing side of things and help bring that experience that I had to the table, help with some of the messaging, help with some of the presentations, help with some of the, just that aspect of it,
Mhm.
it is something that I really draw to, but it's not something that we like talk about, right? Like it's not something that I promote that I did,
Right.
right? It's
Right.
just something that and it leans back to that, leveraging of skills that I have that are outside of my core
Right.
focus.
Right. Now let's put on your MBA hat for a little bit, right? Take off the engineering hat, put on the MBA focus for startups, right? Or teams that are struggling to grow, looking to grow. That's the objective, right? Going into Q4 and, next year. What's one piece of business strategy, right? Advice that you'd wish every founder or executive manager would pay attention to.
Constantly reevaluate the impact of your team,
Mhm.
whether it's people you have or people you're looking to hire. Look beyond that core competency.
Mhm.
Look beyond okay, this guy's an engineer, so I need him to do the design work. What else does he do? Does he do anything fun on the side? Does he have passion for, I don't know, filmmaking or whatever, right? Like find the other pieces of the people that help make them complete people and happy, and leverage those skills into making the company better.
Mhm.
Work as a team. I can't tell you how many times through, different classes and things where, the examples were this person took the helm and everybody followed their direction. Um, that's not the
Yeah.
best way unless that, I mean, if you are a super charismatic and the rock star, I know a guy that leads a company that is brilliant. Like he is the brain behind that entire company.
Mhm.
He does all the engineering work, he does the design work, he touches everything.
Mhm.
But at some point, scalability wise, he can't, right? Like he can't do it all.
Right.
You have to build a team around you and delegate, embrace, and collaborate. Because while he has experience in the things that he has experience in, there are people on his team that have experience in other things that can help the company grow and help them make more money and be more productive. And if you don't lean into those, you're missing great opportunities. And that's one of the reasons why I really, really love the agile environment, because it kind of forces that issue
Mhm.
of everybody playing together, even though there are departments that think they should never have to talk to each other. Everybody needs to be on the same page because every decision in every department affects every other department, period.
What are some of those areas or problems, right, that genuinely excite you, that get you going, that get these wheels turning, that allow you to, be your best self, right? What gets you excited about the work that you choose to do?
So people that know me will say that if it's unsolvable or somebody thinks it's unsolvable, that's going to get me. Like I'm
Mm,
on it.
mm,
That's the kind of thing that I really want to make better. At my core, the reason I do everything that I do is because I believe that what I'm doing can help someone else's life be better. So, not to be too altruistic on it, but
mm,
that's what drives me. Like, whether I'm running in an operations perspective, helping mentor or coach somebody that's trying to develop a business, helping an engineer grow in their career, sharing with students in college or high school about options for career paths,
mhm,
developing something that's going to make an environment safer, right, and help reduce illness.
mhm.
All of that is because I believe that if we all focused on helping everyone we touch live better lives, we'd be a much better world.
I get it. I get it. So now we've got some seat just to kind of play on that a little bit. We've got some executives on the live right now. If you could just share a piece of advice or just something that's been critical to the ability to see opportunities where others didn't. Um, let's kind of shift in that direction. What would that look like?
I would say never say no without understanding what's being presented, right? Like there are opportunities that will come up and they seem ridiculous, but give them enough time to make sure that they're ridiculous before you write them off, right? Like some
Hear them
are
out.
going to be
Yeah,
ridiculous,
yeah.
right? Like they are. But trust but verify everything.
Mhm,
But the only way you can trust but verify is to rely on your team, right?
mhm,
Build real relationships with people that you work with, not like personal from the standpoint of we're all going to be friends and go hang out. Like that's fine. Some companies do that, but inherently you have to have that personal connection with the people that report to you, and the more people in the company that have that sync of hey, we're all here to accomplish the same thing, that's the key.
mhm.
Like we, at Casper, we are all driven by making indoor environments better and healthier, period. Like that's our driving factor.
Yeah.
And that's what we all do every day. Everything we do every day is to implement that.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, so what should we be watching for, right? When it comes to Casper, when it comes to just yourself, what's next? What does that look like?
So we are, as I mentioned kind of casually at the beginning, we are developing a few new products. We're expanding the implementation of the technology so that it can be more effective, both from a cost perspective and an implementations perspective. We're currently developing a variant of our product that will work more cost effectively in ambulances
Mhm,
and because we have a pretty good footprint in the ambulance market.
mhm,
We reduce the pathogens in an ambulance like 95%, something like that.
mhm.
And so, we believe heavily in supporting those EMS workers because they need protection from the random person that's being brought into the back of their ambulance that may have who knows what. They have no idea, right? And so, again, that ties to our desire to help the world be a better place. EMS workers are putting themselves in line every day. Let's help them help other people. And so we're developing a product that's going to be a little bit more in that line. A couple others, and won't go too deep into any of those
Sure.
because, well, we're not.
You, you
But
gotta leave a little razzle
right,
dazzle.
or you leave
Yeah,
a little
no.
to be seen. We'll be showing some things at the HR show in Vegas. I'm sure you can come check that out if you happen to be in that part of the industry.
Sure.
Um, and then for me, like obviously, I love to continue to innovate, improve, all those sorts of things. I have found a place in ASHRAE, our association in the heating and air and refrigeration industry, um, where I just love being involved with that, probably too much, on several technical committees and also on the board here in the local Atlanta chapter. And it's just a really interesting group. And we're helping improve the understanding of the standards that then become building codes. And we're helping shape that future that is unfortunately often driven by, several in specific interests. And so we're kind of disrupting some of that, and we're loving being a part of that. So I will definitely be continuing to disrupt. That's my goal.
Love it. Love it. So now, before we wrap up, right? How can they connect to you, right? Is it LinkedIn? Is it your
Yeah,
email?
yeah.
How
If
can they
you've
learn
got
more about it?
questions about Casper, if you've got questions about, things that I've done in my career or whatever, or you just want some advice, unfortunately, like I said, I am a sucker for helping people be better, so I'm always going to answer your question.
Mhm,
Feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to manage it.
mhm.
But my contact info is on there as well, and I'm pretty easy to find. So online, so feel free to look me up. But LinkedIn is probably the easiest way to connect with me.
So Brett's information is going to be in the chat. My calendar to get some time to kind of chat with me so we can perhaps talk through certain challenges or workforce solutions that you may be looking for. Love to connect as well. Brett's information is there. That's the easiest way to connect with him. I really do appreciate every single one logging in, taking some time out of their morning just to view the first episode of The Unseen Impact. If you'd like to be considered for a guest, to consider to be a guest for future opportunities, we will be doing this on a month-to-month basis moving forward. You can DM me, you can connect with me on LinkedIn. That'd be the best way to do so. Yeah, I had a pleasure, Brett, just chatting with you,
It
kind
was
of
great,
picking your
man.
brain a
Thanks
little bit.
again for
Um,
putting me up, as your test case to see if this is going to be a good thing or not.
absolutely.
Hopefully I did you proud.
Absolutely. Absolutely, bro. I think the conversation was great. Yeah, I appreciate everybody for logging in. Thank you for checking out Unseen Impact. You guys all have a great day. Take care.